Hey everybody, I'm David Bloom with Next TMT. I am here with Tony Huidor, who is now head of the newest part of the Cineverse universe. It was the technology operation. He remains CTO of the parent company, but he's head of Matchpoint, doing really interesting stuff and coming to IBC. I'll be there too. The Cineverse has been around a long time, had a lot of iterations, but its most interesting might be right here, right now. And Tony, let's talk a little bit about what you expect to see at IBC and what you guys are going to be talking about on the show floor.
Great. David, thank you for having me. Yes, we've been going to IBC for several years now, and this year will be our coming out party. We will be announcing what we're calling Matchpoint 3.0. Have really the product has really reached a level of maturity where we feel that it's time for us to come out in a very big, bold way. So Matchpoint will be going major rebranding, and with it, we're actively pushing in and demoing our suite of products, Matchpoint Dispatch, which is content delivery, Matchpoint Blueprint, which is content apps or streaming apps, and Matchpoint Insights, which are our advanced analytics. We're really innovating really across the full suite in different ways. AI is a big focus of ours. Our analytics product, for example, we've implemented CA or conversational analytics so that you can really talk to an AI chatbot and get business insights in terms of what the data tells you in ways that you would never be able to do if you were using standard content analysts to port through the data for you. It's a pretty exciting time for us, and CineSearch remains a big focus of ours, and we've made a lot of progress with that. And so that's going to be a big focus of ours as well for the show.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about conversational analytics. So basically, people have been using machine learning and neural networks to parse through the vast amount of data that gets flowing in. If you're doing any of this stuff, has been just overwhelming companies for years now, right? So they come up with these tools to create pretty graphs and all that. But even that probably is too much. CA comes in, conversational analytics, to be able to talk your way through. Hey, this is the thing you ought to be looking at. Here's the thing that really matters over here. Is that what we're talking about here?
Correct. So, the use case you outline is the Matchpoint Insights 1.0, which we completed 8 months ago. There was
Long time
a
ago.
set
Long time ago. Yeah.
There was a set of predetermined charts and data visualization where you could look at revenue or ad impressions or viewership, engagement, various different KPIs. But those charts were predetermined and they were limited based on certain dimensions. What we do now with conversational analytics is you could essentially go to the chatbot and say, I'm trying to understand my viewership for AVOD across Samsung for the last 6 months. Show me a chart. And much like in Blade Runner, where Harrison Ford looks at a photo and digs in and digs in, digs in, same thing with conversational analytics. It'll show you a chart of your AVOD performance for Samsung. And then you could say, I see there was a decline in March. Tell me more about this decline. Generate a new chart showing me all the different accounts. And why was there a decline there? And then it'll generate a new chart for you. And then essentially, it now lets you look at the data in a much more interactive and dynamic way, where you're not having to then make a phone call to an analyst and say, generate this chart for me, give me reports, give me an understanding, do an analysis for me. What does this mean? You can just do it within the interface of the chatbot. And that requires really training a model. First of all, you got to take all the data and run it through a model. Then you got to train the chatbot to understand what your queries, what you're looking for, how to present it. So we've spent the last 8, 9 months really developing that. And it's something that we're really excited about.
This is interesting in terms of the challenge, though, because it needs to be smart enough to understand all of your data, but also to be able to understand all the questions you might ask to find out the important bits in the data, to spotlight those and to be able to say, hey, you might want to look over at this thing, right? I mean, it really,
Exactly. And so what you have to do is you train it on different use cases so that when you're asking for I need AVOD data, or I need engagement charts, or and understand what it is you're looking for and what the preferred outcome is for what that chart should look like. So there's a lot of really intelligence that goes into that. And that's what's fascinating about AI in terms of what it can do. It provides our staff with superhuman powers, but there's definitely a lot. You really need to understand what you want out of it, and you have to teach the AI exactly what you want, and then it becomes fantastic at it. But you can't just open a box and start asking questions and expect that you're going to get the results that you're looking for.
So there is a ramp up process because that helps optimize and focus a somewhat generalized, still very niche, very, very focused tool to what you need for your job to output and understand all the things that are going on with your company. And that's what kind of time frames are we talking about to ramp up and really educate that AI to really deliver what you need?
Well, for us, it's been about a quarter or two, but the challenge, and we feel we have an advantage with Matchpoint data and data integrity and getting clean data is something we've spent several years on. And we wouldn't be able to work on something like that if we didn't have the foundation there. And so Matchpoint has allowed us to really work on next generation initiatives because we have a very strong, robust foundation. But despite having very clean data, in order for the AI to be effective, it has to be very, very clean data. And so as we've been training the model, we've uncovered issues where the data, the integrity, we weren't sure whether it met the stringent requirements we needed in order to get the right business insights. Like anything else, the AI is only going to be as good as the data that it's reading from. So you need very, very clean, structured data, which, as you would imagine, in the streaming world, is not normally a thing that anyone can expect.
That's
We
the
get
opposite,
data
right? That's the opposite of what
data from 100 platform providers, and it's a mess. It's in all kinds of conditions, and everyone provides different data sets. There's no uniformity, there's no standard. And so it is a bit of a Tower of Babel to take all this data, normalize it in order to make it usable for an instance such as AI, to make it really reliable.
Now, for those who haven't been sort of tracking the path for you guys, I think it's useful to just remind them the process you talked about making sure that data was clean. You guys embarked on what I think is a fairly remarkable investment, and particularly for a company of the more modest size that you guys are. You spent a long time going through tens of thousands of movies, goodness knows how many TV shows, many tens of thousands, to really create a database that is uniform, complete, and effective as a building block for everything else, right? That was that's the thing upon which everything else rests, correct?
What you're referring to is our CineSearch product, or we have a domain-specific data set that we call CineCore. CineCore is essentially an amalgamation of a variety of different data sets, some licensed, some proprietary, some of it AI generated. And really the intent for us was to solve search and discovery. And much like the data example I gave you, if you're asking AI to recommend a movie, the AI needs to know everything about a movie, and that just doesn't exist. So what we've done with CineCore is create essentially an AI optimized version of IMDb, for the lack of a better comparison. So we have a very rich set of data that just doesn't exist anywhere. And recently, one of my sales guys gave me an example of the types of questions it can solve. He had seen a movie that ended with where the plot was unresolved and it faded to black. It ended on a black screen. And so he and his friends finished the movie and they're like, that's a weird ending. What other movies end like that? So he went to CineSearch,
Sopranos.
and so he said he went to CineSearch and said, "What other movies end with an unresolved plot and a fade to black?" And I was like, "The Graduate," and he was like, "Yeah, that was on a list." And so the fact that AI can answer that tells you really the depth of knowledge that we understand about a film at a very intrinsic level. And so ultimately for us, it's helped us solve search and discovery. but there's tremendous use cases there. One of the areas that we're working on is expanding that to use it for highly targeted advertising. So if you're at movie studios and you're trying to reach fans who like Shogun, not only do we know who's watched Shogun, we know what movies or television series are intrinsically related to Shogun. So now we can do very highly targeted ad campaigns. And then kind of an extension of that, one of the areas that we're working on is really bringing in emotion so that we have a very nuanced understanding of the emotions that are contained within the film, because if you're an advertiser, that's an important piece. You don't want to advertise on something that's got a tragic accident where the family dies in a car crash. So understanding what the emotional nature of a film is important. And that's now that we once again have a very robust understanding of cinema, we're continuing to develop and build nuances on that data so that it opens up potentially new business opportunities for us. And once again, our goal is to make CineCore a very unique set of data that you can't find anywhere else, where this information can be used for a variety of different ways. One of the things we're trying to evaluate is whether this data can be used for better determining or predicting box office performance. So that's an area that we think that we have an advantage when we have this rich set of data. How do we apply it in ways that other people aren't thinking about or can't to solve problems within the industry that no one's been able to solve?
Okay. So some of that will be revealed at a future date, obviously, future IBC or Cannes Film Festival or whatever junket into Europe we can figure out to get us over there, right? But in the meantime, Cannes Lion, I guess, maybe. The stuff right now that I think is really interesting is, what's already here is pretty fascinating. But talk to me a little bit about, since we're going to the International Broadcasting Conference, what the opportunities are for this kind of technology in Europe, in the Far East, in Latin America. These feel like they're booming markets, maybe not as developed. Maybe there's more mobile focused stuff, different ways that people are consuming even longer form content. What are the opportunities in broadcasting? I guess the stats we've seen in the next TMT suggest that broadcasting is actually stronger in many countries than it is in the United States. So talk about the opportunities, what you guys see as you come into the conference, where you're looking to expand in particular, and what you hope to have come out of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say IBC is an interesting conference for us because of its European focus, and we are primarily the North American company. But I think what we're seeing is because they're late to kind of the fast space, and fast isn't as prevalent in Europe as it is in America. To your point, they're
But
still
it's
very
coming
dependent.
fast, right? It's
Yeah,
coming
but
fast.
it's coming fast. But it creates an interesting opportunity because you don't get the same entrenchment that you get here in terms of vendors, or everyone's got their own strategy on trying to figure out. There's a lot more interest and reception to explore different ways of solving the problems that they're encountering. Clearly for us, search and discovery, recommendations, programming, what appears on the main menu, all those are key problems. We think once again with CineCore and CineSearch, we're at least on the right track to be able to help with that problem. A common use case we get is I'm a TV manufacturer, or I'm one of the Netflixes or Netflix competitors of the world. What do I put on my main menu? So the curation and the programming is a big challenge because ultimately to do it right, it has to be highly personalized, and no one has figured that out. And what we're looking at and we're trying to address is, can we use CineCore or CineSearch to help automate and better present AI generated recommendations for what should fit on or what should be included and featured on the main menu? And so the curation of the home screen is an important piece, and it is a common use case that I get asked a lot when we demo CineSearch. Can this be used for that? And ultimately, that wasn't the use case we were trying to solve when we developed it, but it's a very easy extension for us to get it there. And that's sort of what we expect to see quite a bit of in Europe. So we're talking to different, rather than focusing on TV manufacturers and the big streamers, it's more the telcos and the ITVs and, the interactive TV and TVOD providers of the world who are trying to solve this problem, which is not necessarily a focus of those types of companies in America, but in Europe, it's very much top of mind.
Interesting. Since you have been to Amsterdam multiple times in the past, any pro tips for people going? Any great restaurants that you treasure and can't wait to go check out again while you're there?
It's so much fine dining in Amsterdam. It's you can't throw a rock without hitting a Michelin star restaurant. So I'm very, very keen on trying to find and discover a few small little hole in the walls for that. So
You'll be
I
throwing
don't have
rocks.
my list. I don't have my list yet, but I'm working on that.
Well, I think what you should do is send us a list and we'll put it in the preview issue. And Tony Huidor's must go. Don't go the night he's there so he can get the reservation. But that sounds great. And so you all have a big booth. Where can people find Cineverse and you and your team? Where can they find you in the sprawling RAI complex?
We will have a meeting room right near the future tech stage. I don't remember the room number. I believe that's hall 14. So we're right kitty corner for that. So we're excited. It's a great location, and we have a lot of good meetings set up there. I'm president of technology, which is Matchpoint. Yeah, president of technology slash Matchpoint. Yes. Thank you.